here, man. I gotta try to remember on our Zoom sessions to not accidentally talk when you're talking, because then it makes us like both go away.
Okay. Well, we can
That
only do
happened.
our best.
All right, well, Lane, welcome back to a second look.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the welcome back, and welcome everyone else that's watching here in a second look. Lane Brown, Chandler Street Church of Christ.
And I'm Jody Garner, Pine Tree Church of Christ. Do you like my flower behind my head?
It matches your shirt, so it looks really nice. Yeah.
Thank you. We staged a setup in our room.
Okay, very good. I'm in my office right now.
Yeah, your office looks good. Matches your shirt. You're looking good.
Yeah, and we're starting our first Sunday back.
Oh, really?
So I'm gonna do my first live audience Sunday. What do you think about that?
I'll watch you on Facebook.
So, any recommendations for a live audience?
Yeah. What you've done in the past.
Okay, very good. So look less at the camera and more at other people.
Yeah, look at people, look at their eyes, don't overthink it. I do think that when we go back to having a live audience, that there will be probably some extra nerves than because it's been a while. Like, it's almost like I've had to learn how to preach to a camera. Now I'm gonna have to learn how to preach again, relearn how to preach to people, babies crying, people coughing, their Bible app reading the Bible out loud because if they have to turn down their volume. So it may take a few weeks to kind of get back in that group, but I'm excited about it. So congrats. Yeah. Glad y'all get to come back. 2 services or 1?
1 service. I think it'll be how we worked out the numbers. I think it should be fine to fit everyone in there. We'll find out what the size looks like, but it'll be an interesting day back.
Yeah. All right. Well, good luck.
So, Jody, did you get a chance to listen?
Did you watch my sermon?
I did watch your sermon. Yes, 3 times.
Okay.
I watched once, listened 2 times.
In fast speed?
In fast speed, yes.
You want to break our tradition, and then we'll talk about mine first, and then spend more time on yours today?
Okay, that sounds good.
Because I wrote a research paper on your text, so I got a lot to say.
Yeah, well, let's talk about your sermon. The big picture.
Big picture.
Big picture.
The Joseph story, so Genesis chapters 37 through 50. That's a lot to cover.
Right.
I'm more of probably an expository preacher, verse by verse. Mm-hmm. So this is a little bit out of my normal style, trying to cover a bunch of chapters.
Yeah, because you're talking about Joseph, and matter of fact, Joseph takes up a ton of Genesis.
It does.
Right.
Yeah. Jacob and Joseph, but Jacob has over 10 chapters dedicated to him, and Joseph had over 13.
Yeah, and so that's what I was thinking. You're really going to have to cruise through a lot of Joseph, but it was good. I mean, because you're looking at the big picture anyway, so it makes sense to go through it fast.
Thanks. Yeah. You could probably slow it down and do like a 7-week series on it. So I may come back to Joseph someday. Right. But in a nutshell, he's one of the younger brothers. His dad, Jacob, plays favorites, gives him a special coat. Brothers sell him as a slave. He winds up in Egypt. And then many, many years later, over 20 years later, his brothers show up, and he's second in command in Egypt, and he winds up forgiving his brothers. Mm-hmm. And then not only that, but like blessing them and helping them. And the main point of the sermon, where, there's a ton of people problems, family problems in that. But not only does he forgive them, it's like his focus was, don't worry about it. God had something bigger in mind.
Okay, so this sermon, and you preface the sermon with this, that you're not going into this lightly, because the sermon is basically, we are going to experience some pretty tough times, right?
Yeah, all of us do.
Yeah, and the Bible is never silent about that. It never tells us that we might not experience tough times. We are going to experience tough times, but how can those be used for God's glory? And so it's scary to kind of talk like that, because, some people are in the middle of the storm. And how do you tell a sermon to them and let them realize that something good can come out of something that could even be tragic or tough times, right?
Yeah. It's really hard to see that in the moment. And I was trying to I didn't want to sound insensitive at all.
Right.
And I think I even said that, like, I realize some of you and sometimes we go through something horrible and we may not ever see like, well, here's some good things that came from it.
Mm-hmm.
And I know all of that. And I also, theologically, here's kind of where I'm at. Yes, God had a big picture plan for Joseph. And you can see that Joseph, by faith, believed in it. I don't know that every single thing that happens to us is like, oh, this is a part of God's bigger plan for our specific lives.
Yeah.
So I've never been a person to just say, oh, everything happens for a reason. Like God's a puppet master making us do certain things.
Right,
I think we have free will, and there's evil in this world. People choose evil. And that was kind of my point at the end, was that I think, if you tie in the Romans 8:28, that if you stay faithful, stay the course, even when horrible things happen to us, God can still cause good to come from that.
Mm-hmm. And what did Joseph tell his brothers? So like Joseph has gone through this whole horrible mess of being sold into slavery, being thrown in a well. He was going to get killed by his brothers, but luckily he passed that. And then everything that happened in Egypt, going into prison, all of this stuff. When his brothers finally come up to him, what did he tell them? What you meant for evil, or what you meant for harm,
God intended for good.
God intended for good.
Yeah. And he did. And even in chapter 50, when he has to repeat it, like all these years later, when Jacob dies and they're still worried. And I mentioned that they lived with guilt that ever since they sold Joseph into slavery, they lived with this chronic guilt forever.
Right.
And so they still couldn't fully accept the fact that Joseph was not going to get his revenge at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And he still says, what you intended for evil, which he didn't minimize their sins. Like he didn't say, you know what, let's just let bygones be bygones. He's naming the fact that what you did was wrong.
Yeah, I like that you did point that out, because people will wrong us. And then you have this idea, especially when we're talking about people problems, that it's okay to let them know that this did hurt. Yeah, whenever you're hashing this out, he's going to forgive them, and because he sees how God's working through this. But it's okay for you to confront somebody and say, well, that hurt me. Yeah. And
you don't want to suppress that or pretend like it didn't happen, because then it's not genuine reconciliation. It's just patching it up or sweeping it under the rug.
Right.
And so I think Joseph realizes what they did was wrong and what they intended was evil. And he can forgive them and give them good things and take care of them, for one, because he can forgive, like we all have to forgive.
Right.
But also he just trusts that, like, hey, you know what? Looking back on all that, it was really tough and horrible, but God has caused some really good things to come from it. In fact, God's using this to save a lot of lives. So he's like, I'm not going to hold this grudge against you, because the bigger picture is God has done some amazing things.
Yeah, and I like how you pointed out that God didn't cause this, or we shouldn't always just look at it and say, well, God caused this for something to happen. And you mentioned the enemy's at work, right? There's and sometimes trouble is going to happen, but God can turn something good even out of the trouble in our life. And so when we're in the middle of the storm, the idea is, how can this be turned into something good? So I started thinking about some worthless, bad things that happen in our life. I was playing, you were talking about college football, right? How you were looking to play some college football, and then you had heart issue, but something good happened out of it, because it kind of turned your life into a different direction that wouldn't have happened should you have been if you would have gotten to live out your dream, right?
Yeah, at the time I'm thinking, why is this happening to me? But now I can easily look back and be like, oh, I'm really glad that I didn't play. Yeah. I couldn't see it at the time. I could,
hard to see it, but it's nice to see that something that you geared it towards something good and praised God through the storm. I started thinking about, if we don't do this, we're all going to have bad things happen to us. And back when I was in college, what happened? I was at Camp Deer Run playing basketball, and I go up for a shot, come down on my knee, tore my ACL. Well, the shot wasn't a winning shot. The shot didn't even go in. Everything just turned out to be something crummy, right? But it would have been awesome if it was the winning shot, right? So I broke my ACL, but it was the winning shot. So that's awesome. Well, that's what I kind of think of it when I thought about bad things are always going to happen to us. So we can either try to see where God is involved in that, turn it into something good. And if we don't do that and we just look at the horrible things that happen in our life, then it's all for nothing. So we had something bad and we didn't even turn anything good out of this. So how do you even turn tragedy into how can God work? How can we praise God in this storm?
Yeah. And, maybe God doesn't waste a hurt.
Right.
And if you think, I mean, there's, whether it's people problems, family problems, or physical, medical problem, whatever it may be, even through all that, sometimes your relationships can grow deeper with people you love. You can get connected with other people who are going through the same thing. Or when you come out on the other side, you can then go back and help people that are going through it, but you wouldn't be able to help them had you not gone through it yourself. So those are other ways of looking at it too. Like,
not easy in the middle of the storm.
Yeah.
And so it is, like you said, you prefaced it right. It's, you shouldn't be telling this lesson to someone at a funeral, right? That's
right.
That doesn't. But hopefully,
I actually have used this at a funeral before.
Yeah,
but it was more so I was sharing all the funeral stories that happened in Genesis and how they unite families that had been divided.
Yeah.
So I didn't really talk about big picture theology or anything like that.
Look at the big picture on this. No, it's tough times, but remember, God's with us all the time, and He's with us through these hard times. How can we praise Him? How can we turn even tragedy into something good for Him and something that'll help us? So
that's right. I had something else I was going to say, but I've forgotten. So if I remember it, I'll say it during the part where we talk about your sermon.
That'll work.
Yeah.
We ready to talk about my sermon, or you got what else you got?
Do we have any concluding thoughts on this?
None.
Okay. That's the end of Genesis. What was I going to say? I had something. It was related, but not like, oh well, forget it.
Was it about burning huts?
You know what? It wasn't meant to be. No, it wasn't about burning huts.
College football?
It wasn't about college football. It wasn't about
Joseph
farmers
saving his brothers?
It wasn't about that either.
Glorifying God?
Probably that. Let's glorify God. God. I said that weird.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyways, it was a different approach to the sermon. It's kind of a tough topic to try to manage. So this Sunday I'm getting deeper into the text and not trying to cover so much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, it was good. It's a sermon we need to know, especially right now as we're going through tough times. So
thanks, man. I enjoyed preaching to an iPhone.
Yeah, very good.
By myself, and I was very sweaty.
Yeah.
When I did it.